2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. Route 1, along the Maine coast. Yellow sun through the rear window of the Hadley Grouptown car. Holt Payton, the black driver in the dark uniform, was bringing the chief executive home from a 5-hour shareholder brunch. Camille Hadley slumped in the back seat, her breath warm with wine, murmuring one word, "Mama." Her clutch slid from her lap to the carpet. A black and white photograph spilled onto the floor mat, sharp under the red light. Holt reached down. He had seen that face every night for 10 years. The light turned green. He did not move. Holt pulled into the porte cochere of the Camden Harbor Inn just before 3. A young valet stepped forward, then stopped. His eyes traveled from Holt's face to the company uniform and back. The small involuntary check he had not yet learned to hide. Holt gave him a single nod. He killed the engine and crossed to the passenger door himself. Before he opened it, he slid the photograph into the inside pocket of his coat. Camille was half awake. She did not protest when he lifted her elbow. The bellhop met them at the elevator with her room key. On the threshold of the suite, she said without looking up, "Thank you, Payton." She had called him by his surname for 3 years. "Get some rest, ma'am," he said. He drove back to Camden by the inland route. He picked up Marlo from the babysitter at 4:30. She had a bandage on her thumb from a paper cut at school. He kissed the bandage. He made tomato soup and grilled cheese. He read her the chapter about the storm in the book she liked. She fell asleep before he reached the last page. After he closed her door, he stood in the hallway a long minute, listening to the house breathe. Then he went down to the basement workbench and took the wooden box off the shelf. He had not opened it in 11 months. Inside, beneath a folded scarf and a stack of letters, was the photograph. He laid it on the bench. He took the photograph from his coat and laid it next to the first. 2 prints, same negative, same dark stain in the upper right corner, same young woman, perhaps 20, in a long coat on a porch he did not recognize. He sat on the basement stool a long time. He did not call anyone. In a small black notebook he kept in his coat pocket, he wrote 3 words. Hadley. Not coincidence. He thought about Maggie. The way she had carried that photograph from one apartment to another for 10 years. The way she had set it down on the nightstand the first night they lived together, before the bed was even made. He had asked her once who the woman was. She had said only that it was the only thing she had been given when she left the home in Vermont. She had said it the way she said everything difficult, flat, and without complaint. He thought about the only memory Maggie had ever shared with him about the photograph. She had been 4 years old, in a children's home in Vermont, when a young nun visiting from Portland had knelt in front of her in the playroom and pressed the print into her hand. "This was your mother's," the nun had said. Nothing else. No name, no address. Maggie had kept it in a shoe under her bed for 9 years before the family in Vermont allowed her to hang it on a wall. He turned the bench lamp off. He climbed the basement stairs. He stood outside Marlo's door for a minute, listening to her breathe in her sleep. Then he went into the kitchen and put the kettle on, though it was midnight and he did not want tea. He needed his hands to have something to do. He thought about Camille in the back seat that afternoon. 3 years of driving, 3 years of the same surname, the same please and thank you, the same brief eye contact in the rearview mirror. He had never asked her anything personal. She had never asked him anything personal. That was the arrangement. Now there was a photograph in his coat that had been on Maggie's nightstand for a decade, and the woman who had dropped it was the daughter of a household that paid him by the hour. He stood at the kitchen window until the kettle whistled. He did not pour the water. Sunday morning in the suite at Camden Harbor Inn, Camille came up slowly through layers of headache. The room was bright. Her clutch lay open on the marble side table. She reached for it without sitting up. She felt the lining. She felt the inner pocket. The photograph was gone. A memory floated up from the dark. A man's hand reaching down for something on a sunlit floor mat. Payton. She did not call him. She called Thea Kelso instead. Thea had been her family's lawyer since before Camille was born. The phone rang 4 times. "Kami. Thea, I need to ask you something, and I need you to think before you answer. Always. Did my mother ever have a child before she had me?" The silence on the line was long enough that Camille walked to the window and back, long enough that she heard the hush of the surf at the foot of the inn. "Camille, Thea said finally. "We need to meet." 6 weeks earlier, on a wet Tuesday, Camille had been alone in her mother's library, looking for a first edition Eleanor wanted shipped to a charity auction. The book was on a high shelf. When Camille pulled it down, a small photograph slipped out from between the pages, black and white. No name, no date. The young woman in the long coat had stared up at her from the parquet floor for a full minute before Camille had picked her up. She had carried it in her clutch ever since. She had not asked her mother who the young woman was. Some part of her had not wanted to know. Now she did. She thought about the back of the town car. She thought about Peyton in the rearview mirror, eyes on the road, never on her. She thought about the moment she had felt the clutch slide off her lap and had been too drunk to reach for it. She thought about a hand at the floor mat, then steady at her elbow on the elevator. 3 years. He had driven her to fundraisers and funerals and her father's anniversary dinner. He had heard her cry in the back seat after a board meeting in November. He had heard her laugh on a call with her college roommate the previous summer. He had heard her order takeout, argue with a vendor, fall asleep, wake up. She had never asked his first name. She walked into the sweet small bathroom and turned on the cold tap and let it run over her wrists. She looked at her face in the mirror. The eyeliner from the brunch was still there in faint smears under her lower lashes. She did not look like a woman who had just learned anything. She looked like a woman with a hangover. She thought about the photograph. She thought about who had it now. She thought about the careful way the driver always set her packages on the back seat, the way he had once, last winter, brushed snow from the door handle before she touched it. Small considerations. The kind of person did not notice until they noticed everything. She thought about a night last spring, when she had asked him to wait outside a dinner party in Brookline that ran until almost midnight. She had come out and found him not on his phone, but reading a paperback under the dome light. She had not asked the title. She had not asked anything. She dried her hands on the white hotel towel. She went back into the bedroom and sat down on the edge of the bed. The light from the harbor came through the curtains in a long, pale rectangle on the floor. She did not move out of it. On Monday morning, Camille drove herself to Portland. She did not tell the office. She did not tell her mother. She met Thea in the small back conference room of the Kelso and Associates building, the one with the curtains always drawn. Thea did not open her briefcase. She did not produce anything. She poured 2 cups of black coffee and set one in front of Camille. "Before I say anything," Thea said, "you should know I have been waiting for this conversation for 32 years. Not hoping for it. Waiting." Thea did not give her details. Only a beginning. "Yes, your mother had a daughter before you. 1994 was the year. She was 19. The baby was a girl. She had named her Margaret on the form and prayed every year that the family had kept the name." Camille drove back to Boston that afternoon at the legal limit and not a mile faster. She did not call Peyton for the first time in 3 years. She requested a different driver from the pool. The dispatcher acknowledged the change in 2 minutes. He did not ask why. He was good at his job. That night in her apartment on Beacon Hill, she opened her laptop and made a call she had never made in 3 years. Not to Human Resources. To Hadley Group Internal Security. She asked for a full background trace on a current employee, Peyton. Holt R., she specified. Not the HR file. Full history. Federal records. Court filings. Press archives. The report arrived at 11:17 the next morning, hand-delivered by a courier in a Navy windbreaker. She read it, standing up. Holt Robert Peyton, born 1991, Portland, Maine. United States Naval Academy, class of 2013. 3 years active duty as a naval intelligence officer. Then, Georgetown Law, accelerated program, graduated 2018. Hired into the Federal Bureau of Investigation that same year. Assigned to the Boston Field Office, White-Collar Crime Division, with a subspecialty in trust fund fraud and shell company networks. 2 prosecutions of note. The first in 2020 dismantled a layered scheme moving family trust assets through Bermuda. The second in 2021 exposed a New England family office, that had quietly drained an elderly client's estate over 15 years. Both cases resulted in convictions. Both made the inside pages of the Wall Street Journal. Special Agent Payton resigned his commission in April of 2022. 8 months later, his wife, Margaret Crane Payton, age 28, of Camden, Maine, died of pancreatic cancer. He filed his application to drive for Hadley Group 6 weeks after the funeral. 3 years of perfect performance reviews. 3 declined offers to move up to fleet management. Camille set the report down on her kitchen counter. She did not sit. She walked once around the island. She walked once around it the other way. A former Federal Bureau of Investigation special agent specializing in trust fund fraud had been driving her car for 3 years. She had cried in the back of that car after a board meeting. She had taken a call from her mother in that car about her father's anniversary. She had read a private letter in that car. She had said things on the phone with him 3 feet from her. She thought about every white guest she had ever brought into the back seat. She thought about the way some of them had handed him their bags without looking at his face. She thought about a board member at Christmas who had said to her in the elevator, "Your driver is very quiet, isn't he?" She had nodded. She had not asked herself then why a quiet black man at the wheel made the board member feel safer than a chatty one might have. She poured herself a glass of water. Her hand was steady. The water in the glass was not. At 4:15 Tuesday morning, Camille left Boston. She drove herself. The drive to Camden took just under 3 hours by the inland route. She arrived before sunrise. She did not stop at the resort. She did not stop for coffee. She drove the dark coastal road through the sleeping town and turned onto the dirt lane that ran behind the wharf, and she found his house by the address in the file. It was a small wooden cottage with a porch and a clear view of the water. The sky was just beginning to gray. She did not knock. She sat in her car 2 minutes with the engine off. The kitchen light was already on. Through the window, she could see a small girl, maybe 7, sitting at the kitchen table in a flannel nightgown, hair sleep-tousled, working with intense concentration on a piece of paper. The girl drew a line, lifted her pencil, and turned her head to consider the next line. Something about the corner of her mouth made Camille set her hand on the dashboard to steady herself. She got out. Holt opened the door before she reached the porch. He was already in a coat. "I figured you would get here before 7, he said. They sat on the porch. Holt brought out coffee in 2 enamel cups. Marlo stayed at the kitchen table behind the window, working on her drawing. She had not looked up. Holt set a small frame on the bench between them. Maggie was smiling in the photo, holding up the same black and white print, laughing at something off camera. Camille looked at it a long time. What year was Maggie born? 1994. My mother was 19. In 1994, the wind off the water moved the bare branches of the maple in the yard. The kitchen light made a yellow rectangle on the porch boards. "I did not know," Holt said, "that you were her sister. I drove you to and from work for 3 years. I did not know." "When did you find out?" "Saturday afternoon." She turned her head and looked at him properly, for what she would later realize was the first time. 3 years of professional distance, and she had never actually seen him. He was 40 pounds lighter than the photograph in his file from his bureau graduation. There was gray at his temples that should not have been there at 35. The wedding band was gone. It had left a paler line on the ring finger, a thin band of skin that had not seen the sun. She drew the photograph from her clutch and laid it on the bench. He drew the second one from his pocket and laid it next to hers. 2 prints. Same negative. Marlo appeared at the porch door, eyes round. "Daddy, there is a lady." "I see her, sweetheart. This is Miss Hadley. She came to talk about a friend." Marlo studied Camille with the unguarded directness of a 7-year-old. "Are you the lady from the brunch?" Camille felt the breath leave her chest. "Daddy was telling me about a brunch yesterday. He said the lady fell asleep." Holt did not flinch. "Marlo, can you finish your map while Miss Hadley and I talk a few minutes?" "Okay, Daddy." The door closed. Camille looked at Holt. "She knows your work. She knows I drive a lady to meetings. She does not know who." The sun came up over the eastern water and lit the photographs on the bench between them. The wood under them was old porch pine, soft from 100 winters. Camille put her finger on the corner of the print she had carried for 6 weeks. Her hand was steady now. It had stopped shaking somewhere on the inland route before dawn. "I need to call my mother," she said. He nodded. He did not offer his phone. He let her use her own. Camille called her mother at 6:45. "Come to Camden now, Cammy. Today." Eleanor was on the road by 7:30. She arrived at the cottage at 11:02. She had brought no overnight bag. She had brought nothing but the leather purse she always carried. Holt opened the door. Marlowe stood beside him in a clean dress, the one with the small embroidered flowers on the collar. Holt had told her only that a guest was coming. He had not said which kind. Marlowe stepped forward. She offered her hand the way she had been taught. "Hello, ma'am. I am Marlowe." Eleanor took the small hand. Her own was shaking. "Hello, Marlowe. I am a friend of your aunt's." Camille had not used the word aunt yet. She let it stand. Marlowe studied Eleanor for a polite 3 seconds. "May I be excused upstairs, Daddy? I have a map to finish." "Yes, sweetheart." Marlowe climbed the stairs without looking back. They sat in the living room. Holt brought out tea. Eleanor took the cup but did not drink. The teacup made a small rattle against the saucer. She put it down. "Kami, Mother, you found the photograph in the library, the one in the book, 6 weeks ago. I knew you had. I went to put a different book back on the shelf, and the gap was on the wrong side. I knew. Why did you not ask me about it?" "Because I knew what you would ask me back, and I have been afraid of that question for 32 years. The room was quiet. Outside, gulls. Eleanor turned to Holt. She had not yet looked at him directly. She did now. "You were married to my daughter." "I was. I never knew her name." "Margaret. Maggie. She was 28 when she died." "How?" "Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4 when they caught it. 4 months from diagnosis." Eleanor closed her eyes a long time. "When I was 19, she said, I was in love with a boy who worked at my father's boatyard. My parents told me they would put us both out on the street if I kept the baby. I signed the papers in a Catholic hospital in Portland. I was told the baby went to a good family in Vermont. I was told I would not be allowed to know more." Camille had never seen her mother cry. Not once. Not at her grandfather's funeral. Not at her father's. She did not cry now either, but her face was wet. "I named her Margaret on the form. They told me the family was free to change it. I prayed every year on her birthday that they had kept it." "They kept it," Holt said. "What was she like?" "She was funny. She was sharp. She was kinder than I ever was. She drew maps the way Marlowe does. She kept that photograph of you on her nightstand for 10 years and never knew who you were." Eleanor put her face in her hands. Holt rested his hand very lightly on the arm of her chair. Not on her, just on the chair. The way you steady a thing that might fall. Upstairs in Marlowe's room, the soft sound of a colored pencil on paper went on, even and unhurried. After a while, Eleanor opened her eyes. She wiped her face with the flat of her hand, not with a handkerchief. She looked at the staircase. "May I meet her properly?" "Not today," Holt said gently. "Today she has been told a guest is here. Tomorrow we can begin telling her something else." Eleanor nodded. She understood the discipline of it. She had spent 32 years learning what could be said when and to whom. Eleanor went to the inn that evening to rest. Camille did not go with her. She walked alone down the gravel path behind the resort, the one that led to the working wharf. The April air off the water still had winter in it. The boards were dark and damp. She did not hear Holt come up behind her. He had on the same coat. He carried a coil of mooring line in one hand. "I have a boat to check on," he said. "Of course you do." They walked to the end of the wharf together and stopped at the last piling. "I remember something," Camille said after a while. "When I was 10, my mother and Thea were in the sunroom. They thought I was upstairs. My mother said something I never understood. She said, 'Before Spencer, there was a complication, and the complication has a face I see when I close my eyes.' I thought it was about money. I thought it was about a business deal. I was 10. Maggie tried to find her, you know," Holt said. "When she was 27, she wrote letters to the Archdiocese in Portland. The records were sealed. She got nothing back. A year later, they found the tumor. She told me one night in the hospital that she had wanted to know what her mother's voice sounded like. She did not say it like a complaint. She said it like a fact." Camille did not speak a while. The light on the water moved. Peyton. Yes, you drove me to my uncle's funeral last October. Up to Bar Harbor. You sat in the car for 2 hours in the rain while I was inside. I remember. Did you know at the time that he was your sister's uncle too? No. I did not know any of this on Friday. I knew it Saturday at 2. By Saturday night, I had not slept. By Monday morning, your background check showed up in a courier bag. She let out a small sound. Not a laugh, closer to a breath. The 2 hours in the rain, he said. There is one thing I never told you. She turned her head. The security guard on the gate. He came down to the car 3 times. First, he asked to see my badge. I showed him. He asked who I was driving for. I told him Hadley Group. He went away. 20 minutes later, he came back, asking for the badge again. His shift had changed, he said, and he had not seen me approved. The third time, he wanted me to step out of the car so he could see my hands. Camille closed her eyes. The car had your company logo on the door, he said evenly. He had been told who was inside. I had a written transport order on the dash. He came back 3 times. You never told me. You were burying your uncle. The wind picked up. The boards under her feet were slick with the morning's rain. She turned to walk back, and her heel caught. He had her elbow before she fully knew she had slipped. His hand was steady. He did not hold tighter than he needed to. He waited for her to find her footing. When she had, he did not let go right away. She did not pull away. They walked back along the planks side by side. She said very quietly, "Maggie was my sister." He did not answer in words. He nodded once, slowly. At the end of the wharf, he stopped and let her elbow go and stepped half a pace back, the way a driver steps back when he opens the rear door for a passenger. The habit had not yet left him. "Tomorrow," he said, "Thea wants us both in Portland. 8, us both. You and me." She said the words. Legal heir. I do not know what she has, but she has something. Camille looked back once at the water before they walked up the gravel together. The office was small. The desk was old. Thea Kelso had been practicing law in the same room since Eleanor was 23. A box sat on the desk between them. The cardboard yellowed at the corners. The seal on the top intact. "Sit," Thea said. They sat. "I have been waiting for a legal heir for 32 years, she said. "Today I have one." Thea cut the seal with a letter opener. "In 1994, she said. Eleanor came to me 3 weeks after she signed the surrender papers in Portland. She was 19. She brought $4,000 she had saved from a summer job and an emerald ring her grandmother had left her. She told me to liquidate the ring and place the funds in a trust in the child's name. The trust was to be quiet. It was to grow. It was never to be touched. It was to be opened only when a direct blood heir of Margaret Crane could be legally identified." Thea opened a folder. Over the next 31 years, Eleanor added to the trust quietly, year after year. Bonuses from her work at Hadley Group, inheritances from her own mother. The trust was managed offshore under a corporate trustee in Wilmington, Delaware. As of the most recent statement, the principal stands at $45,300,000. Camille did not move. "The trustee on record," Thea said, "as of 2002, when Spencer Hadley took over the Hadley Group financial office, is Spencer Hadley. Eleanor signed the change. She trusted him. She did not have patience for paperwork." She slid a second folder across the table. "For 22 years, she said, Spencer Hadley has been reallocating the trust, quietly, methodically. The funds have moved through 6 shell entities: Delaware, Bermuda, the Caymans. The trust statements that came to Eleanor each January were not the real ones. He prepared them himself." Holt had picked up the second folder before Thea finished speaking. He read. His eyes moved faster than Camille had thought possible. "Bermuda layering," he said, mostly to himself. "Round-tripping through a Cayman feeder. Wilmington corporate trustee Cross & Associates." He stopped. He looked up at Thea. "Cross & Associates," he said. "Yes. In 2020, I prosecuted a man named Edward Hawk for moving family trust assets through this exact structure. Same Wilmington firm. Same trustee names. I won that case in federal court in Boston. Yes. Mr. Hawk was defended by counsel from a firm called Hadley & Cross. Yes. Holt set the folder down. For the first time since Saturday afternoon, Camille saw him look something other than tired. "Spencer, copied my own case file," he said, page for page. He used the structure I dismantled in court. He thought no one was reading. He thought he had improved it, Holt added quietly. He layered through one extra Cayman shell and called it innovation. The change would have helped him on a forensic audit. It will not help him in court. The Hawk filing is publicly available. Any first-year prosecutor with my old reading list will see what he did within an afternoon. He looked at Thea. The timing is on us. We file before he hears we have the documents, Thea said quietly. "Mr. Payton, do you know who has been reading?" He almost smiled. Not quite. "I don't know." Thea closed the folder. "There are two things to do," she said. "Recover the trust and remove Spencer Hadley from the company. The trust we can recover with the documents we have. The removal will require a board majority. The board votes Friday." Camille looked at Holt. "My daughter," he said before she could ask, "is the legal heir. The trust is hers. I will not let him touch what is hers. I will also not let him touch you." Camille did not look away. Friday. News of the Portland meeting reached Spencer within 36 hours. He did not waste time. On Wednesday morning, he called an emergency board meeting for Friday afternoon. The agenda named one item: a no-confidence vote in the chief executive officer on the grounds of unverified personal entanglements distracting from corporate stewardship. He had chosen the phrase carefully. He had chosen it the way men of his generation chose phrases. It said nothing on the page. It said everything in the room. A board of 12, 11 of them white, would hear it the way it was meant to be heard. On Wednesday afternoon, the head of the Hadley fleet received an internal memo directing the immediate termination of one Payton H.R. for violation of client confidentiality protocols during the transport of an executive principal on Saturday last. Spencer's signature was at the bottom. He had never met Payton. On Wednesday evening, a private investigator with a long lens parked in a rental sedan at the end of the dirt lane behind the wharf in Camden and photographed Eleanor Hadley walking up the steps of the cottage. By Thursday at noon, all three moves were known: to Holt, to Thea, and to Camille. That night, Holt drove to the small rented house Camille kept on the Camden side, a stone's throw from the inn. It was the first time he had been inside any private space of hers. He took off his boots at the door. She had pushed back the rug in the dining room. Documents were laid out on the long table in 3 rows: bank records, trust statements, shell company registration filings. He walked the length of the table once, then again. He pointed. "This is layering. 3 transfers through entities in 3 jurisdictions in 7 days, each one within 10% of the prior balance. The triggering pattern is the same in every quarter." He paid himself, in effect, by routing the money through a Cayman feeder back to a Delaware management company he owned through a nominee. This is a violation of Title 18, United States Code, Section 1957. Money laundering, knowing involvement, premeditated. She listened. She did not interrupt. "To prosecute him criminally is the Department of Justice's call," he went on. "What we need to do Friday is colder. We need to convince a board of corporate trustees that he is a financial liability the company can no longer carry. For that, we do not need to prove a crime. We need to show that the public proof is coming. And is it? Once Thea files the trust grievance Monday morning, it becomes a federal matter within the week. There is no path on which Spencer is still a board chairman in a month." She reached for a page at the far corner of the table. Her hand passed over his on the wood. They both stilled. Neither pulled back. The rain that had been holding off all evening hit the kitchen window in a single soft sheet. She left her hand where it was, not on top of his, beside it. "Thank you, Holt." It was the first time in 3 years she had used his name. He did not move his hand. He did not look up. "This is my sister's case, Camille. There is no thanks owed." He had used her name in return without thinking. They both heard it. She let her hand stay where it was another breath, then drew it back and turned the page. They worked until almost 2. Marlowe was at the babysitter's overnight. Holt did not say so. Neither did she. When he finally stood to put on his coat, the rain had stopped, and a band of pale sky was visible over the harbor. At the door, she said, "Friday, Friday," he said. He drove the empty inland road home in the gray hour before sunrise. Eleanor asked, through Camille, whether she might come to the cottage one more time before Friday. Not as a stranger this time. Not as a guest. As a woman who would like to be introduced properly to her granddaughter. Holt thought about it for a day. He said yes. She came on Thursday at noon. Marlo was home from school for a teacher's day. She had laid out her colored pencils on the coffee table in a row in order from yellow to violet. "Marlo," Holt said. "This is Eleanor." "Hello again, ma'am." "Hello, Marlo." Marlo studied her. "Daddy says you knew my mother when she was little." Holt had been preparing that sentence for 2 days. He had chosen the words on purpose, in a way. Eleanor said, "Yes." Marlo opened her sketchbook. "I am drawing a map of a house I never saw. Mama told me about it once. She said it was the house her great-grandma lived in, with the gray porch and the spruce tree and the long driveway down to the rocks. Mama said she only saw it in a dream." Eleanor's hand went to the arm of the couch. The house was her mother's house in Rockland, with the gray porch and the spruce tree and the long driveway down to the rocks. Sold in 1989, 16 years before Maggie ever knew it existed. "May I see?" Eleanor said. Marlo turned the sketchbook around. Eleanor leaned down. Her face was level with the child's. She put her hand on the back of Marlo's hand. Marlo did not pull her hand away. Eleanor's eyes were closed. "Mama said the spruce was on the south. I drew it on the north by mistake." "Yes," Eleanor said. "Yes. I would like to fix that with you, if I may." They bent together over the map. After a while, Eleanor took a pencil. Her hand was steadier than it had been at the door. Eleanor sketched the spruce on the correct side, lightly, the way she had been taught to draw as a girl at her own mother's table. She drew the porch boards with the small gap at the third board, where her brother had once pried up a coin he had hidden there. She drew the brass knocker shaped like a fox. She did not narrate. She only drew. Marlo watched the lines come down on the paper without interrupting, the way a child watches a story she is being told for the first time. In the hallway, Holt watched. Then he stepped out, onto the porch. Eleanor came out 40 minutes later. She had been crying without sound. She did not wipe her face. "I do not deserve any of this," she said. "I am not the one who decides that," Holt said. "If she ever asks when she is older why I was not in her mother's life, you tell her the truth. Do not make it kinder. I would like to be remembered honestly, even if it is badly. Maggie would have wanted her to know you. That is what I will tell her." Eleanor looked at him a long moment. "You are a very good father, Mr. Peyton." He did not answer that. Camille was waiting at the end of the gravel drive, leaning against her car. She did not come in. When Eleanor reached her, Camille only said, "Stay in Camden tonight. Mother, do not go back to Boston." Eleanor nodded. The two women drove away together in Camille's car. Holt went back inside to his daughter, who was carefully erasing a spruce tree on the wrong side of a map. He sat down on the floor beside her and held the eraser steady while she worked. The 34th floor of Hadley Tower had glass on 3 walls. 12 people sat around the table. Spencer Hadley at the head. Camille walked in with Thea Kelso on her left. The man on her right wore a charcoal gray suit and carried a thin leather folder. He did not look at Spencer. He did not look at anyone. It took Spencer 3 seconds. "The driver," he said. 2 older directors exchanged the smallest of glances. They had heard the tone before. "Mr. Hadley," Camille said, "the agenda for today's meeting has been amended." Spencer half rose. "On whose authority?" "Mine. And before I continue, allow me to introduce counsel." She set a thin laminated card on the polished table and slid it down to the center. "Holt R. Peyton, former special agent, Federal Bureau of Investigation, White Collar Crime Division, Boston Field Office, 2018 to 2022. Spencer Hadley's face lost color in a clean line from his hairline down to his collar. 5 years ago, he had read the hot case in the Wall Street Journal standing in his kitchen and had copied the structural diagram into a notebook the same night. He had thought he had improved it. Holt stayed seated. He spoke for 7 minutes in the language of accounting, not the language of feeling. When he finished, the room was quiet. Thea Kelso placed a single sealed document on the table. The Margaret Crane Trust, she said, constituted by Eleanor Hadley in 1994, is to be reconstituted in the name of Margaret Crane Peyton, deceased, under the guardianship of her surviving heir, the minor child, Marlo Ann Peyton. The board's authority does not extend to the trust. It does extend to the chairmanship of this company. Spencer began to speak. The door opened. Eleanor Hadley walked in. She was wearing the gray wool coat she had been married in. She had not taken it off. She did not sit. Spencer, you will resign from this board today, or I will end this marriage tomorrow morning at 9 with the firm Mrs. Kelso has retained. You choose. The room did not breathe. Spencer looked at the card, at the trust document, at his wife of 26 years. He resigned, in writing on a yellow legal pad. Before he left the room, the vote was conducted anyway. 11-0. The Department of Justice received the case file before close of business. The trust was restored to Marlo Ann Peyton, with Holt as guardian. By Tuesday of the following week, the wire confirmation came through to Holt's phone in the workshop, where he was sanding a kitchen chair. He read it. He kept sanding. 4 months later, in early April, the harbor in Camden was the color of pewter. Holt did not drive for Hadley Group anymore. He was thinking about consulting. Civil, not criminal, family trust disputes. Camille had stepped down as chief executive and taken the chairmanship. She kept an apartment in Boston but spent 3 days a week in Camden. Eleanor came up on weekends. Marlo called her Grandma L. On the workshop bookshelf, 2 photographs were now framed. The one of Maggie had always been there. Beside it, recently, Camille had hung a new one. Marlo and Camille on the gray boards of the wharf, both looking out at the water, both wearing the same expression around the mouth. One April afternoon, they stood at the workbench together. Camille's hand rested on the worn pine beside his, the distance between her smallest finger and his about the width of one knuckle. Neither closed the distance. Neither pulled away. Outside on the porch, Marlo was reading aloud to Eleanor from a book about birds. Neither of them had been looking for any of this.